Joining us from what is Missouri? The Show Me State. Live from St. Louis, Mo, our good friend Nick Ragone, everybody. What's really going on, boy?
Wow, it's been so long, and I missed that voice. And, hey, I just want to say it's so good to be with you.
I know, it's good to hear your voice, too, man.
When Arnold passed, the first thing I thought was, I need somewhere to talk about this because you know me and your audience knows me. I'm a golf nerd, and I'm a historian, and Arnold Palmer is the ultimate story. And I was listening to you talking about the 1960 Open at Cherry Hills.
Yep.
Arguably the greatest U.S. Open of all time. Because
Clearly.
It was a confluence of three generations. You had Hogan making his last stand, and Arnold, who was at his absolute height, and you had Jack, the 20-year-old fat amateur, who clearly Arnold and Ben Hogan knew that this was the future, even if the media hadn't quite figured it out. And Hogan famously tells a story that after the round, he said, "I don't feel bad that I didn't win, but this 20-year-old kid should have won by 5 shots."
Right. If the 20-year-old had known what he was doing, he'd have beat us by 5 strokes.
Yeah, and it's been wonderful seeing the Jack. You know, I was a Jack guy growing up because my dad was a Jack guy. I always loved Arnie, though. You couldn't help but love him. But I always saw Arnie through the filter of the Jack rivalry, and it really was a rivalry. I know the Golf Channel's kind of watering it down a little bit to make it seem like it was just rainbows and lollipops, but they had an intense rivalry, and for a while it was a little bit bitter during, it's hard for somebody as good as Arnold to turn it over to the best of all time, Jack, and I think it forged both of them and made them better players, but it was it defined the last 50 years of golf. It's hard to think of one without the other.
It really is. It really, really is. I said at the top of the show, with Bobby in there, with Tiger in there, and Jack, I still think that Arnold Palmer is the most important person to golf. Just the marriage of television and business and superstardom. He was perfect. He was the guy, and he led the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Jack's the greatest of all time, Tiger's second, Arnold the most important. And what's amazing is not only was he the most important person in the history of the sport, he's arguably within their respective sports the most important person. I mean, you could put Babe Ruth in that category. He invented modern baseball, really. You could put Wayne Gretzky or Gordie Howe in that category, I guess. Football, you had a Jim Brown and Joe Namath. Not the greatest players of all time, but Arnold was transcended in not just in golf, but all sports. And Ali's the only person that comes to mind that you could say these guys were larger than life. They were as charismatic off the field as they were on the field, and they transcended their sport to become cultural icons. And they're gonna, Jack's records might be broken someday, and Jack will be forgotten somewhat. Arnold will never be forgotten. He doesn't hold any records, but he'll never be forgotten.
And I think it is the fact that he was human and he did err. In fact, there is a golf course in L.A. on Pico Boulevard. It's called Rancho Golf Course, where they played some senior tournaments. And back in the 60s, they even played some PGA Tour tournaments there. But it's a public course. You and I go play it today. And there is a plaque. I think it's on the, don't even quote me. I forget what hole. It's on the back. Where Arnold, there's a row of homes. There's a par 5 that goes along a row of homes on the left. And Arnold made like a 14 on this hole where he just kept snapping it into these homes. And they set up a plaque there for him. And I think that's why we loved him. He was us. He would miss the putt. He would screw up on occasion and lose, but he always fought. He always went for it. He never played it safe. And just to see him hitch up his pants and bob his head left and right, I mean, the guy was just a legend.
Yeah, I mean, the only modern equivalent is Phil Mickelson, and, Phil goes for it when he shouldn't. He's great with the fans, and it's interesting. I was watching Steve Burkowski of the Golf Channel interview Tiger just now, about 10 minutes ago. And,
really?
And they finally got Tiger, who's at Hazeltine for the Ryder Cup, and I thought it was interesting because they couldn't be more diametrically opposed, Tiger and Arnie. I mean, Arnie was great with fans. He gave himself. He looked everybody in the eye. He never turned down a fan request. He was a true gentleman through and through, and I'm thinking to myself, it's hard not to see that interview and just want to ask the obvious question to Tiger, which is, why can't you try to do a little bit of that? And it's so interesting because Phil does it in spades, and Phil, is beloved. Tiger's respected. Phil's beloved. Jack was respected. Arnie's beloved.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that you say that the Golf Channel is right. Nick Ragone is our guest, by the way, our old friend. Many of you may remember Nick. Been a good friend to this program for many, many years. We normally are talking to him about presidents and things of that nature. But being the scratch golfer that he is, what you good? You got it down to a 2, 1?
I'm about a 3 or 4.
When are you going to try out for the U.S. Open?
Wait for the I turned 50 in about 6 years, so I'm going to try for the senior tour.
Nice. I think you could qualify for the U.S. Open.
I actually started playing a lot of golf again this year, and it's funny. I just out of serendipity, last year we went to Disney in March, and it was the week of the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and I asked my wife. I said, for one of the days, can we skip Disney and go to the API? And she agreed, and so me and her and the 2 kids, I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, we went on a Friday to Bay Hill, and I had never been to Bay Hill, and thought, this is great. And I thought to myself, I don't know how long Arnold will be there, but maybe he'll be there. Sure enough, he was there, and my wife saw him, and they got a picture, and
wow.
It was truly amazing to think that was his last Bay Hill. I think this year, I'm not sure if he actually was able to attend. I know he didn't go to Augusta National, but
yeah.
To watch him drive around the grounds and be treated like a normal person and treat others like and he was friends with lots of them, but it was truly extraordinary to think that here's a man who's the most celebrated golfer of all time, and yet he still had such a common touch to him.
Yeah. Clearly, talk about his upbringing, because his dad was a PGA pro, but his dad had to work the golf course. I mean, he was kind of an elite because he had access to the golf course at a young age.
Yeah, he was not an elite.
But he was,
his dad worked a hard scrabble job as a greenskeeper at Latrobe Country Club, and they were not well off, and he was a tough guy. I mean, I think he had an interesting relationship with his dad. I think it was of that generation where you weren't overly warm and affectionate. You were tough on each other. But it was hard scrabble. It was Western Pennsylvania, but he instilled in him the values of a firm handshake and a look in the eye. And again, it's interesting. Nicholas did grow up. His dad was a pharmacist. He was a member at Scioto, which is a great golf course that has held major championships.
Very affluent.
And, yeah, very affluent. And it was another thing that they were just from different worlds. And Arnold, the son of a greenskeeper, and Jack, the son of a pharmacist, one worked at a golf course, the other was a member at a golf course. And the intensity of their rivalry, I just love watching that old footage. And the best part about it was that while they were intense rivals, Arnold still had a soft spot for him. And Jack tells a story that in his first tournament as a pro, Arnold beat Jack by 12 shots, but Jack came in second, but he was on the 18th hole as a par 5, and Jack needed to make birdie to get second alone, which would have been a nice paycheck. And there, Arnold's 12 shots up, and on the 18th tee, he puts his arm around Jack and says, look, it's an easy par 5, relax, take your time, make your 4, get your check. And what other superstar would have done? Could you see Tiger putting his arm around somebody and doing that?
Not at all.
Not at all.
And the thing that I loved about their relationship is that even when they got older, Arnold still knew how to keep Jack in his place a little bit. Jack tells a great story. They're playing. It's about 10 years ago, where they were older, but they still played a little bit. And on the first tee, and Arnold says, I'm playing a Titleist 1. And Jack says, I'm playing a Titleist 1. And Arnold says, so what are you going to play? Jack's like, well, I guess I'll play Titleist 3 then, I suppose. I mean, he still got like one upspin on him that, hey, I was the guy in the jungle with the machete paving the way for you.
Yeah, Arnold was a master needler, a lot like Phil Mickelson too. And they, if you can remember back then, Arnold flew his own plane. And Jack tells the stories about when Jack was, again, a young pup on the tour. They would do exhibitions every Monday to make a little extra coin.
Right.
And Arnold would pick him up in his plane. He'd fly from Latrobe to Columbus, Ohio, pick him up, and then they would go off to. Can you imagine that again? He'd be just flying his own plane, picking up Jack, who is his rival, who's bigger and stronger and clearly going to be better, and then barnstorming and doing exhibitions. I can't think of. I mean, to me, it's unfathomable that could happen, and yet they did.
Yeah, he just stopped flying too about 10 years ago.
When he was 80, he gave it up. I mean, he was flying his own jet all that time, and he said it was therapeutic after a tough loss. You get in the plane, you're focused on flying, you're not focused on golf.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that strikes me about Palmer is he had some of the most debilitating defeats of all time. The 1966 U.S. Open at the Olympic Club in San Francisco, where he had a 7-shot lead with 9 to go against Billy Casper and lost in a playoff.
Lead.
He lost the 61 Masters to Gary Player by double bogeying the 18th hole. All he needed was bogey to win.
Yeah.
And he lost that. I mean, those are Phil Mickelson, Greg Norman-esque collapses, yet nobody remembers that. They remember the man.
Yep. Winning the Masters on only even-numbered years, right?
58, 60, 62, and 64.
That's incredible. And never won the PGA Championship.
Yeah, a bunch of runner-ups. I mean, it's one of the things that keeps him out of the, he's not in the top 5 of all time because,
right.
Clearly Jack and Hogan, Sarazen, Tiger, and Gary Player won the career Grand Slam. Arnold's not in that category, but, even Jack in his statement today, it was great to see him pay homage to Arnold, even though Jack had the much better record. There was only one Arnold Palmer, and we wouldn't be watching the Golf Channel were it not for that guy.
That's
right.
A
great story. The guy, Joe Gibbs, the businessman who co-founded it, tells a story about how before the creation of the Golf Channel, when they had some early meetings, the investors were getting worried, and Arnold's people were in a meeting with Joe Gibbs and Arnold saying, Arnold has to pull out. This doesn't work. And Arnold cut it off and said, guys, if I didn't take a shot through the trees every now and again, nobody would be watching me, so we're going to do this.
You gotta love the guy.
I mean, it's Phil Mickelson-esque,
Yeah, it really is.
And there's some cosmic symmetry to him passing the week of the Ryder Cup, in that I think the Ryder Cup has gotten a little out of control, and maybe this will help remind that it is an exhibition and tamp down some of the over-the-top histrionics, and just let them play a little bit of golf and keep Arnold in mind, and keep the, that it's about sportsmanship. It's not always about one-upping the other side, and I hope some of that affects this week's play.
Well, that's certainly what Jack thought, and it's funny that you should say that, because I was just watching the match that I think started the whole doggone thing in terms of going overboard.
99?
No, I think it was Keola.
Keola, the war at the shore, Bernard Longer's putt.
Yeah, I really do. Just the way that Hale Irwin didn't even get a chance to shake his hand.
You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, and it just, I think that's where it started. I really do. I'm running out of time. I got to get your thoughts on your homeboy, as the kids would say, the man out of Fordham University, the man who I'm going to see call a baseball game for his final time this coming Sunday, Vincent Edward Scully.
It's so funny. So I being a Met fan and growing up in New York, I know Vince Scully's voice because he was for many years, I don't know how many years, the voice of NBC Baseball Game of the Week, right? With
Joe
Tony Kubek and
Joe Garagiola.
I fell in love with him in the mid-'80s because the Mets were good and he did so many of those games. But, for any Mets fan, that he was the soundtrack for the '86 World Series. And that's the last time he won. And it's still arguably, if not the greatest World Series of all time, one of them. And it was made all the much more special because he was calling those games. And it's just, I think fate has a way of putting the right person at the right time. But I think the Dodgers organization and the fans were blessed to have arguably the greatest sportscaster of all time. And
no question.
It's amazing to think that he's this sharp, this old.
At 80, what is he, 88?
I think 87.
Yeah. I think the greatest broadcaster of all time. I've got him with the Murrow and Cronkite, and the fourth one. Who's my fourth, JR? I think I put Chick Hearn or somebody up there.
No, you never put Chick.
I never put a fourth. I think he's the greatest broadcaster of all time.
I think he's right there, and I don't want to hear the comparisons to Al Michaels and Bob Costas. They're not in the same category.
No, are you kidding me? They're not even in the zip code.
Yeah, I mean he's a storyteller par excellence. And whenever I think of the '86 World Series, I think of us winning, but I always think of Vince Scully's calls and the way his voice was so recognizable and so commanding, and it's so easy on the ears. And again, in New York, in the mid-'80s, we were on so many of those national games. I was so lucky to hear Vince Scully calling some of those games. And,
well, the classic is Buckner, it gets beyond the bag and it's by Buckner.
I mean, it's just, I know Red Sox fans don't like to hear it, but thank God we won that one, or else it would have been hard to hear. Of course, whenever the Mets played the Dodgers and I try to get some of his, the other thing is I give Vince, he wasn't a total homer. I mean,
not at all.
Paid to be homers, and he was just a good storyteller.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's so sad that for Bill Buckner, who's a former Dodger, by the way,
right.
who was the Dodger who was on, who climbs the fence when Aaron hits 715 against the Dodgers.
Really?
Yeah, that's, if you see the video, there's a left fielder that tries to climb the fence. That's Bill Buckner, our left fielder back in 72, that Vinny was calling that game. But,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Here's the greatest thing, I think. Fred Clare said this about him. He said that he is the epitome of how a man should handle himself professionally and throughout life. And
that's pretty good. And I was thinking of watching the Arnie coverage today and thinking of Scully and another guy who gave himself, and there was a great Vince Scully story about him giving an interview to a young college kid who was nervous and shaking like a leaf, and he did it, and the tape recorder didn't work, and Vince graciously said, "Why don't we do it again?" And again, what that's a Palmer thing. That's people from that generation did that, and just watching the Arnold Palmer coverage, I have a sense of loss, not because I knew him, but because I feel like those values are sort of dying with them. And I look at modern athletes today, and they're so pampered and self-indulgent, self-aggrandizing, and there's not a lot of role models left to say this is the way you're supposed to do it.
Yep. That part of America is dying. A man working for one business for 67 years. That part of America, a stand-up guy like Arnie coming from Latrobe and becoming a world-famous ambassador, those things, that part of America, I think, have died. We'll never see it again.
Yeah, I think you're right. And two things real quickly. One is, if you haven't seen the HBO documentary on the 1960 U.S. Open at Cherry Hill, the one Arnold won, one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. It really is the confluence of Nicholas Hogan and Palmer eras all at one time. The other is, there's a great book by the USA Today columnist Ian O'Connor on the relationship between Jack and Arnie, and it was a much more complicated, textured relationship than kind of the watered down version we're seeing on the Golf Channel today. But I think it really, to me, it defined the second half of the 20th century when it came to golf, and there'll never be another Jack Arnie. Everybody wanted Tiger to have a rival. He didn't have one, and rivalries are a hard thing to come by, but that was the real deal.
Yep, the big three, he, Jack, and Gary Player. It's fun to watch.
Are they bigger than Rory, Dustin, and Justin? Jordan Spieth? I can't imagine it.
Come on now. Come on. When are you coming out to Cali?
I don't have any scheduled trips, but I'll have to figure one out. My kids have heard all the stories about eating at Luigi's, and so they want to come out and eat at Luigi's, because I keep telling them the greatest meal I ever had was at Luigi's. So I've piqued their curiosity.
There you go. Well, you got to get out of here.
Actually, I was at San Luis Obispo this summer. I spoke at a conference there. We went out, and what a beautiful piece of California.
Yeah, that's about, what, 2 hours?
Yeah, I was almost tempted to drive up there, but I was like, oh, wait, I'm on the ocean. Why would I go to Bakersfield? But I love Bakersfield.
We don't blame you, my brother. We don't blame you. All right, man, great to talk to you. Great to hear from you. Stay in touch, and we'll come up with some other excuse to get you back on the program.
Maybe the Ryder Cup if it's an interesting one.
All right, very good. Thanks so much. Take care, buddy. Nick Ragone, everybody. Nick Ragone. Live from St. Louis,